the 45th sequel of the Church of Uganda at 150 years, a celebration. And in today's sequel, we are getting into more and more pastoral visits of the bishop, now, of course, as Bishop of Uganda Diocese. And today we are going to see him even moving into Bunyoro for the first time. So let's begin. Bishop Tucker made a pastoral visit to Nasa Mission. Remember, Nasa is northern Tanzania, Kagera region, all of that. It was not in Mombasa Diocese, it was in Uganda Diocese. So he set off on the 24th of October, 1898, of course using Lake Victoria. And he was able to find at Nasa missionary Jones, who was down with black water fever, a very dangerous fever, a killer fever of those days. Anyway, on the 7th of November, he was still at Nasa. He confirmed 26 candidates. He then returned to Namirembe. On return to Namirembe, he then moved into Chagwe, and he actually ended the year with the missionaries in Chagwe. Missionaries Gordon was also arriving, as well as Fisher. He found them in Ngogwe on their way to Namirembe. So 1898 ended, and the new year, 1899, was welcomed, and it was welcomed with the arrival of the Indian Punjani troops. Remember, during the mutiny in 1897, MacDonald wanted this to come, but they were coming from very far. So finally they arrived, January 1899. And they were immediately deployed in Busoga, Bulemezi, and Singo. The Indian troops were from the Indian Central African Rifles of Zanzibar. So they laid siege and monitored movements of people across the entire region of Busoga, Bulemezi, and Singo. Remember, what brought them was to get rid of the Nubians who had mutinied, and they were now camping in the Lake Choga swamps. So here they are. They have arrived, and they are very well trained. They are big in number. So they therefore began what had brought them. Sporadic skirmishes went on from here to there. And in fact, they were the order of the day between the Nubians in the swamps and the new arrivals, the Indian Punjani troops. Now, Semei Kakungulu had become the native ruler of eastern Uganda. Remember, he was a military general, at one time the ADC or bodyguard of Kabaka Mwanga, so he was not a small man. So he was now in charge of the entire, native leader of the entire eastern Uganda. And he was allowed to raise native troops from the region. So these native troops of Semei Kakungulu joined the Indian Punjani troops to pursue the ex-Nubian mutineers on the run across the Lake Choga swamps, and that is Lango region, southern Lango region, all of that area, to try and get the mutineers who were very well armed. It was therefore in those circumstances that Bishop Tucker decided to make a pastoral visit to Bunyoro, but it was dangerous. Remember, Bunyoro is hostile. Their king is on the run, and you as a bishop, you want to go to Bunyoro? The colonialists or the protectorate government was very worried. They could not allow him to go alone. They made sure that as he moves into Bulemezi, he's accompanied by some forces to guard the missionaries, as we are going to see today. So Bishop Tucker left Namirembe on the 11th of February 1899 to begin the pastoral visit to Bunyoro. He was accompanied by the Reverend Deacon Fisher, using the horse of the regents. However, I am now being warned that before we go to Bunyoro, we should recognize a very quick ordination that had been earlier made. On the Sunday of Septagesima, which was the 29th of January 1899, the bishop had ordered some 4 native deacons, and some 4 native priests were ordained. And that is how this missionary who is accompanying him to Bunyoro is now being called a Reverend Fisher, because he had been made a full priest on the 29th of January 1899 with others. As a matter of fact, the other priests who were also ordained to full priesthood were Reverend Bartolomayo Zimbe, Reverend Nasanairi Mudeka, and Reverend Samuel Mukasa, together with Reverend Henry Mukasa and Reverend Noah Chikwabanga. They became full priests, ordained full priests. But those who were ordered as deacons were Thomas Senfuma, Edward Bakayana, Noah Nakiwafu, Sadura Kachigula Chibuka, and Serwano Aliwonya. Those became Reverend deacons. Now, this was the first ordination service inside the new cathedral. It was not new. It was the same building. But in 1898, it had transformed from a mission church to a cathedral. So since that transition, this was now becoming the first ordination, although not necessarily the pioneering, but the first real ordination in a cathedral, with the bishop sitting on a cathedral and not on a pastoral visit. So that Fisher is now a Reverend Deacon and is now going to accompany Bishop Tucker to Bunyoro. And they were using a horse which had been given to them by Zakaria Kisingiri Kizito, who, remember, was a very powerful man. He was a regent. He was the ruler of Uganda together with 2 others. They were joint regents. So he gives his personal horse to the bishop to use during the pastoral visit to Bunyoro. And the bishop reached Waruleta mission station, where he confirmed 92 candidates. Yes, 92 candidates ready for confirmation. On the 13th of February, he confirmed those ones. Then the following day, he reached Kisitula mission station, which was being looked after by Reverend Samuel Mukasa, who had also just been confirmed or ordained a full priest. There he confirmed 120. Wow, 120 candidates ready for confirmation. Indeed, that was on the 14th of February, which you people call Valentine's Day. The bishop at that time was busy confirming, as the Europeans in Europe were celebrating their Valentine's Day. Anyway, the bishop then moved on and reached Kisagara mission station, where he reached on the 18th of February. There, he found that the Nubian mutineers had burnt the Kisalizi mission station, and the county chief of Bululi, Chimbugwe Anderea, was personally supervising the rebuilding of a fresh mission church. The leadership at that time, I like it. They used to get involved for things to happen. Now, the British Punjani soldiers were all over the place at Kisaliza, where the bishop had now arrived and found a burnt church. And the Punjani soldiers were looking for the Nubians exodus hiding in the swamps. Now, the Nubians were armed and they were very powerful. So Bishop Tucker wanted people to relax and free themselves from the war tension. So at the chieftaincy enclosure of Kimbugwe at Kisalizi, he baptized some new converts and afterwards proposed a game of soccer outside the chieftaincy. So a team of soccer led by the Reverend Deacon Fisher was to play against a team led by Bishop Tucker. And Bishop Tucker removed his garments, I want to call them robes, I don't know what you want to call them, and he put on sportswear, a short, a t-shirt, and the bishop's team versus the Reverend Deacon Fisher team, they went into the field. What was happening? The bishop is trying to make the people relax. The bishop was trying to make the people free themselves from that war tension. So here they are into a game of soccer. They go into a game of soccer. They play football. The Chimbugwe Andrea cheered them on. But unfortunately, the score and the win of that match was never recorded in the diaries of Bishop Tucker. But what a way to relax, Lord Bishop. Okay, on the 21st of February 1899, the Bishop's party resumed the journey to Masindi, accompanied by 30 Baganda native soldiers. The defunct soldiers were, call it a reserve force. And they were on the instructions of British Colonel Tannen. So the Indian Punjani troops were not far from their route to River Kafue, which they crossed using a big boat, and then on land to Fort Muruli and to Masindi. At Masindi, Reverend Deacon Thomas Semfuma welcomed them, for he is the one who first accompanied the first missionary to Bunyoro in September 1898, and his name was Lewin of the Bulemezi Mission Station. Lewin had since returned, but Semfuma had remained in the grass-thatched and reed-mud-built church. On the 26th of February, Bishop baptized 2 royal family members. Yes, Kabarega's royal family members are being baptized on the 26th of February 1899. They had already been successfully instructed, and they had been given names Josiah William and the other one Victoria. 3 new catechists were also baptized by the bishop. Yes, the ministry in Bunyoro had even commenced before the bishop's arrival. Now the journey from Masindi to Hoima, which at that time was not called Hoima, at that time what we call Hoima today was called Kahora. Yeah, and the journey began from Masindi to Kahora, and it was under a heavy guard of the British Indian Punjani troops, up to when Bishop Tucker's party reached the amphitheater of hills and a stream running through the valley. The party was received by British Captain Hicks in charge of Hoima Fort. The Omukama Kabarega was not present. He was hiding. He was in the swamps of Lango, although they didn't know it at that time. They were looking for him everywhere. They didn't know where he was. Kabarega was a sworn enemy of the British. Therefore, the guarding of the bishop was very necessary. He was in danger territory. Colonel Everett was in town too, and was a big help in identifying a spot for the Christian Missionary Society in Kahora. A few natives in Hoima were already converted to Christianity by the natives who had been to Buganda, and these were led by a Christian chief called Biabachwezi. Now, at the identified site in Kahora for a mission station and a church structure, construction began in the presence of Bishop Tucker. He was in town. And the Anglican church was planted in Bunyoro, or that southern part of Bunyoro, with baptisms of a few who had proved to have completed their catechism courses. On the 5th of March 1899, Bishop Tucker and his party left Kahora, or what you call Hoima today, and the party left and traveled, reaching River Kafue, where the bishop fell ill. He fell ill. His posters or porters had to carry him on a mud-made hammock Yeah, they had to find out a hammock, to make a hammock which is locally made, to be able to carry him. However, he recovered because he had medication. Quinine was available at that time, by that time. So he took quinine and he was able to recover. Thank God quinine was available. Our bishop then recovered. So the party reached Mityana on the 13th of March, 1899. You may wonder, from Kafu to Mityana, yeah, the bishop had a mission there. He confirmed 79 candidates. 79 candidates. As if that was not enough, he then moved on to Kasaka mission station, where he confirmed 53 candidates. He then returned to Mityana, where he left on the 30th of March and reached Namirembe the next day. How come so fast? He had a horse. He had a horse, so he could move very, very, very fast. That was the pioneering pastoral visit of the bishop to Bunyoro, and you can see how busy he was. These details are recorded by himself in the book he wrote, Volume 1 and Volume 2 of his ministry in East Africa. He wrote the book, and therefore we are using his very own book to celebrate the history of the Church of Uganda at 150, creating awareness through history. We therefore thank the Lord for these sequels, and may he continue to bless us all. Amen.